Hi everyone. I hope you've had a good week. My name is Jake. My channel is Jake Trades and Invests. And on this channel, I do a weekly recap of what has happened in the markets along with where I think the markets will be headed in the near future. So with that said, let's jump right into our first chart, which is always gold. Gold had a pretty strong week up until Friday, closing in on that $3,000 mark before pulling back on Friday. So with that strong selling candle here, I think this next week will be one to watch. You know, we may see some consolidation above the 20 EMA, right around the 2850 zone. If the selling pressure continues, we still do have a small gap down here from a couple of weeks ago around 2770-ish price range, which would coincide with the 50 EMA. So we'll continue to watch gold in the coming week or two, see if it can pull back, kind of settle down before charging back up and touching this $3,000 level or even surpassing it. Silver, kind of the same story. We were looking good, consolidating above our breakout zone from a couple of weeks ago. You can see some strong wicks coming in from the bottom here with some buying going on. Only for Friday to go up towards 34, pass it, and sell off, heading right back down. So much like gold, I would think silver may consolidate for the next week as well before heading higher, but everything is still looking good. We've broken out, moving averages are pointed up. So I think silver looks good to head higher. For platinum, we had tested our resistance zone the other week, pulled back, came back up this week pretty strong and quick, and retested it again. Just kind of broke above the upper band here and then sold off hard on Friday like gold and silver did. So I think platinum needs another week or two to build a little bit of support, build some momentum. Again, hanging around this $1,000 mark could be a good entry if you're willing to hold on to it for the next couple of weeks and get through any kind of chopping that it's going to do. But overall, I think platinum could be a buy around these levels. You know, the moving averages are starting to increase and head higher. So if platinum can hold on around this $1,000 mark, it could be a good time to buy it before it breaks out and continues higher. Copper did exactly what I've been talking about for the last few weeks. It broke out, it came up, it tested this 480 zone, got up to 483, it looks like, before selling off on Friday. We came up to the 161 level on our Fibonacci levels here. So for now, I think copper could sell off and settle down a little bit, just like the other metals. Might stick around the 460 zone, possibly pull back all the way down to this 450 zone here. That could make a little bit of sense. We've got some resistance coming through that area, plus that's the 100 level that we had set the other week. So I would wait for copper to pull back and kind of settle down and show that some support is building before buying back in, before it heads higher and tries to retest this 480 to 490 zone. But I do think copper looks good for the short to medium term once it pulls back and you can find a good entry price. For crude oil, still another week of selling. Early in the week, we came back up and tested our resistance zone, tested the moving averages, and pulled back towards $70. Right now, the price is below the moving averages, so not looking too strong in the near term. However, if price can come down to this support zone that we've had, I'll zoom out a little bit. We've had this support zone from around $66 to $70 for the last 4 years or so, where prices come down and touched it and bounced off. And then we built quite a bit of support here at the end of last year. So I think if oil comes back down in here, can hold above 66 at the minimum, that could be a good buy zone before it breaks out and heads higher in the short to medium term. But for now, I think we just need to wait and see what oil is going to do. If it ends up breaking below the bottom of this support zone, um, obviously that seems to be a little more selling going on. So I would just wait and see. For natural gas, we've continued to climb higher. There's a little bit of selling coming into the candles on Thursday and Friday, but we are back above the moving averages. They're starting to turn higher. Um, we've got a little bit more to go before we retest our old support line here. So it's possible natural gas could come back up, maybe test that $4 mark. That would kind of line up with this resistance zone that we had before, along with the upper trend line here. So I could see price maybe jumping up here and retesting it before pulling back. This seems to be kind of a steep rebound here. So I would think, again, price may come up, maybe touch the $4 mark before pulling back and building a little bit of support before heading higher. Right now, natural gas is just kind of choppy, so I would just continue to watch at the moment. One other thing is we still have this gap down here at the 320 to 305 area that we haven't filled yet. So if we were to come up to the $4, retest it and sell off sharply again, natural gas can move pretty quick. It's possible that we could come all the way back down to the $3 area again, maybe test the 200 EMA before finding some support. So right now, natural gas just seems to be all over the place. So let's just keep watching it. All right, moving on to our indices. The S&P was finishing the week kind of strong this week. We've been chopping sideways after breaking out of our flagging pattern for the last couple of weeks, and then we started to finish the week on a stronger note, breaking higher again. So all in all, I think the S&P 500 looks good to head higher as long as nothing really comes in and shakes the market. We've had a few instances over the last few weeks of some news coming out that sold off the markets a little bit, but they didn't sell off dramatically, which I think is a good sign, shows a strong underlying market. So again, I think the S&P 500 looks good to head higher and test the all-time highs and potentially hit new all-time highs. Nasdaq's the same story. Finished the week hitting all-time highs. So much like the S&P 500, I think the Nasdaq looks good to head higher, barring any crazy news that would send the markets down. But yeah, after we broke out a couple of weeks ago, we've just kind of chopped sideways, built a little bit of support above the 50 EMA, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday had a pretty strong impulse up. So hopefully this week we'll continue to keep the momentum going. For the Dow Jones, similar story. We are coiling up here above the 20 EMA, which looks really good. I'm going to go into a 4-hour and take a closer look at this coiling pattern here. I'm going to just put a little triangle pattern in place. So we're doing a little bit of coiling. I think as long as the price stays within this range here, it may pull back going into this week, maybe test this 50 EMA on the 4-hour timeline. But ultimately, I think the Dow will head higher with the S&P and the Nasdaq heading higher. So Dow is one to watch. I will say that I'm actively in the Dow trade, playing it to the upside. So in the next week or two, we'll see how that plays out. There is a resistance band. If I zoom out here, we can kind of put the Dow in a channel, something like this. So my thinking is if we can hold the 20 EMA or hold above the 50 EMA and break out of this triangle pattern that's forming, I'm looking to get out around the 46,000 mark, which would be all-time highs. So that's what I'm watching currently. All right, we'll zoom back into our yearly. The Russell, kind of the similar story. It's just kind of chopping sideways, building a little bit of support, it seems. We had a selling day on Friday, but it's not a big one, so nothing too concerning at the moment. We do still have a little bit of a gap here, so if the Russell were to sell off a little bit, I could see it coming down, retesting our support zone and the 200 EMA, filling this gap before heading higher. So I would look for maybe an entry down here if the Russell were to play out by coming back and testing this area and holding. Otherwise, if we started to break above this 2320 area, it looks like it's been acting as some resistance here. If we can get above that and hold, I would think the Russell's going to look good to head higher as well. And last, we'll finish with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is still holding above our support zone and above our downward trend line here from where we had broken out a couple of weeks ago. Just last week, it looks like we had a really strong buying candle. It looks like we went down, retested this support zone, and bounced right back up with finishing strong and then selling off a little bit more. And then now we've just been chopping sideways. So again, I hold as long as Bitcoin can remain above the support zone, remain above this downward trend line here, and if it can get back up above the moving averages and back up above the $100,000 mark, I think Bitcoin looks good to head higher. It tends to follow the Nasdaq to some degree, so if the Nasdaq starts heading higher and continues to head higher, I would think that Bitcoin may follow. So that's all I have for this week. I appreciate anyone that has tuned in to watch. If you find value from my analysis, please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps. If you haven't already, check out last week's video and see how my analysis held up to the price action this week. And that's all I've got for this week. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you again next week.